Hi everyone, this is Mindy Red. Welcome to episode 2 of Red Letter Days. I have been trying to get this episode out for the last couple months, and although it was written a while ago, a long time ago, I haven't been able to get it edited and recorded due to technical glitches, computer crashes, one thing after another. So I'm just going to read it to you. I don't really want to be on camera. Don't really ever seem to know where to look on these things when I'm recording, so excuse my wandering eyes. But I did want to share a story, a little bit of a personal testimony of mine from earlier in my life when I was going through a time of tragedy, and how beautifully God's hand was moving in my life during that time. And we've all been touched by tragedy or trauma or loss or sorrow, disappointment, whatever it may be. And if any of you can find comfort or peace from this, if you're going through it now or have in the past, I hope it is a comforting message for you. So I've entitled it Beauty for Ashes, Rising from the Ashes into God's Peace. I hope you enjoy it. "27 years ago, this past Thanksgiving, my father committed suicide. This isn't that story, and it's not meant to be upsetting, but it is an inspiring tale of how God's grace, peace, and healing love transformed my life as a result of that experience. Even at 28 years old, well into being a young adult, losing my father in this way broke me. Growing up one of 2 children and the only daughter, I was the textbook definition of daddy's little girl. I had him wrapped around my little finger, and like some little girls, I envisioned one day I may grow up to marry my daddy. I thought there wasn't anything he couldn't do, like he was my own personal superhero. When I was 7 years old, I remember watching him repair something at his workbench. I said, "Daddy, you can do anything. You're like Superman." I didn't understand his response at the time, dropping his hands and wrench to the wooden bench with a thud, and his head and chin sinking down to his chest, his firm and emotional "no" trailing off softly to "I'm not." His own humanity, naturally flawed and fallible, betrayed him through his voice, shocking a little girl who only saw him as invincible. I was never sure why that memory remained so vivid in my mind for so many years, other than God's knowing way of giving me something to hold on to help me understand a future hurt I would one day be struggling with. I thought of that moment so many times since his death, how that little girl could have never understood the inner turmoil a grown man could be living with. 20 years later, my father was gone, and in the shock of the moment, my very first thought was, no, that's not possible. Who would walk me down the aisle? Of all the things to think. I wasn't even dating anyone at the time. But that little girl who long ago dreamed of marrying her daddy instead now had looked forward to the day he would be walking me down the aisle, his arm in mine, toward my future husband, whoever he may be, and begrudgingly give me away. The stereotypical and culminating father-daughter moment was taken from me, and my mind just wouldn't go there. In the year that followed his suicide, my coping mechanism was avoidance. I used the convenient excuse of my job to throw myself into my work. I was very effective at completely submerging myself into the demands of the job or the needs of my mother, or ignoring my own personal life. I mostly shunned my tight-knit group of friends who wanted to be there for me. I refused dates. I pretended my career was the most important focus of my life. In reality, I was too numb to do anything else, and honestly not interested in feeling any other way. I wouldn't let my heart be exposed to anything that could possibly make me feel or hurt. It was sealed up, tight as a drum, and shut down. That's just how I liked it. After 1 year, feeling tired, deflated, depleted, and hollow, I came to my low point, where I could no longer sustain the level of denial I had created in my life, and I knew I needed to deal with the root of it all. I saw the date on the calendar looming ever closer, shocked at how quickly The year had gone, yet how slow it had been. The approaching 1-year anniversary triggered all the normal reactions for anyone going through trauma, and I felt them all deeply. I suddenly acknowledged to myself that my life was consumed with the flames of grief, being ravaged by a fire I couldn't contain, and that I was burned and scarred beyond recognition, a heap of ashes where my heart used to beat. At this point, I finally turned to God. My coping mechanism of avoidance had applied to God as well, and I had been trying to rely on myself and not God, keeping him at arm's length. I never blamed God for what was happening or ever even held a grudge about it. I didn't question my faith or stop believing in him. I simply knew the truth, that if I opened up my heart to God, he would make me open it up all the way, deal with the hurt and pain once and for all. And that I had not been ready to do. But now, maybe I was. And so, as I like to do, I began a conversation with God, using his own words, his own promises, finding the living, God-breathed scriptures of the Bible to answer my questions and to give me direction and comfort every time I find what I need. And in this case, he countered every excuse I could come up with to delay my healing any longer. It went something like this. I can't, Lord. Yes, you can. You can do all things through me. I give you strength. But I'm not ready. Why are you troubled? And why does doubt rise in your mind? I'm afraid of feeling again. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for I will be with you wherever you go. It still hurts too much. I will give you beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. I don't know if I can trust. Trust in me with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. I don't know how. I don't even know where to start. Have faith in me. Whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear my voice behind you saying, "This is the way, walk in it." But Jesus, my heart, I heal the brokenhearted and will bind up your wounds. And my peace, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in me. I couldn't put him off any longer, so I did what I knew he wanted and what I needed to do. I prayed. I remember almost every word of that simple prayer I uttered there on my bed that sunny Sunday afternoon. Jesus, I know I have turned away from you instead of turning to you, but I know you have never left me, Lord. Jesus, I'm ready to live again. I'm ready to feel again. I'm ready to love again. I'm ready to have more of you in my life and for you to heal my heart, Lord. I trust you, Jesus. I have faith in you. Please help me. I remember the flood of tears turning into compulsive, uncontrollable sobs. The sobs turning to wails, the wails turning to groans, soul-deep moans of bottled-up pain I didn't even recognize as mine. I remember the groans turning to silent cries as I was so emptied sound could no longer escape from me. The silent cries turning to whimpers, the whimpers turning to silence, and the silence turning to peace. I sat there in that peace, still, with my pillow now wet with tears and clutched to my chest, down only a few inches from my mouth where it had been, trying to muffle the sound of my heart breaking open and being ripped out of my chest. and I sat there and wrapped myself in the blanket of God's most perfect peace and soaked in his healing love. It was the first real emotion I had allowed myself to feel in a year. My heart, the part of me that needed mending first, before I could deal with anything else, became whole again. The unique stages of bereavement for suicide would all be dealt with in due time, but this day I knew in my spirit my heart was beating again. But believe it or not, that's only half the story. That week, after my mom and I decided to spend Christmas with my brother and his family, I stopped at our regional airport, as it was before the time of online ticketing, and made our flight arrangements in person. Feeling renewed, it was the first thing I had been looking forward to in a long time. I booked our seats together for a departure day a few days before Christmas, using frequent flyer points I had for my work travels. The attendant at the computer reminded me to come back a few days before our flight to give them the frequent flyer points voucher and to pick up our actual tickets and boarding passes, which was the process back then if you didn't have them mailed. She gave me a printout of our itinerary and I was on my way. Several weeks later, a few days before our departure, I returned to the airport to take care of these things. As the attendant tried to pull up my record with the information I provided, she said, "I'm sorry, Miss Curtis, there's no record in our system of a reservation for you or your mother." After checking multiple times, looking at our itinerary, calling in a supervisor, no one could explain where the record of our reservation had gone, even with the confirmation number and itinerary. It was as if it had just vanished. Seeing the proof of the itinerary I was carrying, the airlines found us another flight on a different plane, flying on a different day at a different time. We had to fly a full day earlier, as all the other flights were totally booked for Christmas. My mother and I got on our plane a few days later and began our first leg of the trip. When we landed in Atlanta for our layover, the saga continued, as we were now told our next plane had mechanical issues. There would be a delay, and we would have to go to a different gate than the one originally assigned to us and fly on a different plane. When we arrived at that gate, I approached the counter to check in and got our boarding passes. The gate attendant apologized as she handed them to me, staying in line with the trend of the journey, said due to the change of planes we would be assigned different seats, no longer next to each other. We didn't even care at that point and just wanted the trip to be over. As we walked onto the plane, I looked at our boarding passes and saw that my seat was near the front of the plane and hers was all the way to the back. Being the good daughter, I gave my mom my seat so she would be more comfortable, and I trudged toward the back of the plane. When I got to the second to last row, I dropped my books in the aisle seat, a seat I wasn't supposed to be sitting in. On one of two planes I wasn't supposed to be flying on, leaving from a gate I wasn't supposed to leave from, on a day I wasn't supposed to be traveling on, at a time I wasn't supposed to leave, and busied myself putting my carry-ons in the overhead compartment. But God, exhausted, stressed, and wishing we had opted for a quiet Christmas at home, I finally fell into my seat, a seat that God decided I definitely was supposed to be sitting in. On one of two planes I was supposed to be flying on, leaving from a gate I was supposed to leave from, on a day I was supposed to be flying on, at a time I was supposed to leave. I glanced to the seat to my left and looked. For the first time, into the eyes of a man I had now been married to for 24 and a half years. 1 month after I asked God to heal my heart, He brought peace to my heart. And then He brought me to my husband to seal the deal. You see, God has a way of confirming things to you in the physical for what He has also done in the spirit. I asked Jesus to let me feel again, to love and live again, to heal my heart. Well, he did. And I guess He thought He'd just put an exclamation on it for extra emphasis. In the Old Testament, ashes were used as a visible demonstration of mourning, grief, ruin, disaster, and repentance. Yet at the same time, ashes can represent something more hopeful, the dust that our earthly bodies will one day return to, that completes the circle of life as we are then resurrected, revived, restored, and made new in our heavenly, eternal bodies. In Isaiah chapter 61, verses 1 and 3, Isaiah said prophetically of the coming Messiah, "He has sent me to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that He might be glorified." Beauty for ashes, not beauty from ashes. He doesn't resurrect us from the same ash of what was once broken. He makes us new in exchange for the ash, in exchange for the old, in exchange for the broken. 2 Corinthians 5:17 teaches us that therefore if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. So like the hope that rises from the gift we can receive but never earn, the ashes of my heart were made new that day, and they began to rise and rekindle, the embers softly smoldering again, then glowing, reminding me that my heart was still capable of being revived, until eventually a spark reignited, fanning into flame the gift of God. And the fire that once destroyed me erupted into a beautiful new flame that warmed every chamber of my heart once again. The whole time I was in mourning, God was with me, giving me time, waiting. He knew I'd come around, and I did. When I was able to open my heart to God, He was able to heal my heart, pulled me out and up from the pile of burnt ashes, blew His warm, life-giving breath into my bones and into the depth of my soul, saying, "Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am Lord." And He revived me, and He restored me. He created new love from the loss of love. And so, a year and a half later, my father did walk me down the aisle at my wedding, my brother on one side, God the Father on the other. He not only gave me away, but played travel agent and matchmaker to bring us together. He gave me the beauty of love in exchange for the ashes of my grieving, and I grew in my faith because of it. And with that faith, I knew I would be more prepared for the next firestorm I would go through, and the one after that, and the one after that. Each one resulting in deeper faith, deeper trust, and a stronger foundation, seeking Jesus instead of ignoring Him. We know the heat from the flame of the storms we face can burn us, but if our foundation remains firmly planted in Him, we can use the nutrient-rich ash as fertilizer for our roots and become taller and straighter and stronger, more regal children of the Most High King. The gnarls, knots, and scars from the fire barely visible compared to the glory of the majestic canopy covering and protecting us from above. And as Isaiah said, He will call us His trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, so that through us and our experiences and testimonies, we will come out of the storm, rising up, newly created from the ashes into the light and beauty of a new day, and into his promises, and into the victory he knew was always waiting for us, helping others going into what we just came out of, thus planting seeds through which he will be glorified. Give him your ashes, and let him give you beauty to become whole again, to become complete again, to become new again. I said to him, Jesus, my heart, look at me now. Thank you. He said, I knew the plans I had for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Thank you all for joining me for my second episode of Red Letter Days. Until I see you again, I pray that the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Bless you all.